The Formula One season is in the middle of its first triple header of the season, racing in Japan last week with Max Verstappen win, and yesterday in Bahrain, where we saw McLaren 1-3 with Oscar winning from pole, George in second, and Lando in third. Welcome back to Penn State Sports Night. I'm Christina Rutherford, joined by Sydney Coxe and Marina Contreiras. We are 4 races into the season. While some teams are starting off strong with McLaren getting multiple wins, other teams have been struggling to perform. Ferrari hasn't been where people thought they would be. Driver changes in Red Bull teams. Marina, walk me through what's been happening so far this season.
So you mentioned Red Bull. I want to start there because Red Bull had a move at the beginning of this triple header that I think shocked a lot of people. They swapped Yuki Tsunoda for Liam Lawson from their junior team, which in hindsight, probably a good decision. I think they probably, in my opinion, they made that decision to keep Max Verstappen. Max has a clause in his contract where if they're a certain points gap from P1 in the constructors, he can leave. So even though he has a contract till 2028, that option is still there. So I think that's part of the reason they just chose to do that. That's not the only reason, though, because that car is unbelievably difficult to drive. It's a horrible car. With a good setup, Max can pull off the wins that he did, like he won in Japan, or a P5 or a P3, which is what's keeping him in this fight. But the McLarens, that's what I want to talk about. They're very dominant. They're at times 3/10, 5/10 quicker than everybody else. They're lapping quicker. Everyone has Lando for their championship. I don't. I have Oscar. I have Oscar.
Okay. Only other acceptable option, honestly.
Yeah. Lando Norris is very good. In my opinion, he still makes too many mistakes. In this last race, he had a false start. He was way outside of his grid box. Even Max caught it from the other side of the camera.
There's videos of Max just looking back like 15 times, and then snitching, being like, Lando's out of his box.
And
guys.
it won't be the last time. It definitely wasn't the first time Max has snitched on Lando. But
or even anybody else around him.
That was the first mistake. He also locked up a couple times. He wasn't the greatest. He dropped down and came back. He ended up finishing third, like you said, but Oscar dominated the race. He won by 13 seconds. In my opinion, he's shown stronger performances, but I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, obviously that Red Bull switch, because I want to touch back on that for a second, I think that switch was honestly something that should have happened a while ago because I love Liam. I think that he has great potential, and I think in the past we've seen some amazing performances from him, but I don't think that he was ready to be put in that Red Bull seat in the first place.
He was definitely not ready.
I
think 100%
Yuki
agree.
has been waiting to get that seat, and I think when Liam got pulled up, you know the camaraderie between those two. I think you could see that there were some hard feelings. It is a rough sport, you know it is, but Yuki has been trying so hard to get that seat, and everybody thought that he was just too immature. Now look at it, he's made the first points finish for Red Bull this season.
Yeah, and the first person to score points in a Red Bull since Las Vegas in 2024, last season, that wasn't Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
I mean, before this race, all, 70-something points that Red Bull had were all Max Verstappen.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and then what you said about McLaren, completely agree. I think they're just going to have a problem with those two going at it. I think McLaren is obviously at the top. They're leading everybody else by milestones, but these two are going at it, and I think Oscar's just a lot more disciplined at the moment. I think he has a lot more under his belt, and let's just on some other ones. Ferrari is just not where they want to be right now. They have said it flat out. Fred Vasseur just doesn't think that they're at where they want to be. Hamilton's still coming to terms with the car and the team itself, and when you even look at Charles, he's just he's struggling. He doesn't understand why they're this far back, and when they're getting a P4, P5, wherever, they're celebrating because this is where they have to be. Because we're behind consistency master George Russell over here. He's constantly up here. He's scored top 5 in every single race so far.
Yeah.
Which, could you imagine that?
I never thought that was going to happen at the beginning of this season.
I mean, George has been on more podiums than Max, right?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Because you always have the McLaren boys up there, but he's coming up there.
Yeah.
And the Ferraris haven't even had a touch. They almost did, but then you had Lando sneaking up there.
Yeah.
And it's just when you keep getting into all of these situations where you have the Mercedes sneaking up on the Ferraris, they're not having the chance to perform because they brought these upgrades to this race in Bahrain, but they just weren't the upgrades you needed for this race. And they even said it flat out, they just weren't the times to bring it.
Yeah, they said we're going to have multiple disqualifications or something. We're expecting more mistakes. It's with the upgrades they're bringing. That's not what you want.
Multiple disqualifications for different things, that's not what you want to have. So you need to fix that ASAP if you want to be a constructor contender.
Absolutely. And I think also, I said this yesterday on my podcast, you breed your own luck. you got to be there to pick up the pieces when McLaren inevitably has something happen. When Lando has a false start, you've got to be there to pick up the P2. That's the only way anyone but a McLaren is going to win this Drivers' Championship.
Yeah. And look what happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, we've seen some great racing over this triple header so far. And like usual, we've also seen the FIA give some interesting penalties so far. So for this next part, I'm going to ask you guys to review a couple penalties the FIA may have given in the first 2 races of this triple header. And you decide if it was deserved or dumb. Let's look into some red flags. Okay, Carlos Sainz was fined 20,000 euros before the Japanese Grand Prix during the national anthem due to some stomach issues, which was confirmed from a doctor at the race. But so do you guys think that was deserved after the FIA?
I want to preface by saying we don't know what these 3 penalties are, so we're
we have no clue
by the
what's
seat of
coming
our
up here.
pants here. I don't agree with this penalty. One, you said it, he had a doctor's note. Secondly, he was 5 seconds late.
Yeah.
20,000 euros for 5 seconds late to a national anthem kind of blows my mind. Not only that, but I mean, it's 10,000 and then 10,000 on hold. Mm-hmm. If he does it again, that's 30,000 euros, and he had a doctor's note. It's not like he was just skipping to skip. I mean, he was in the bathroom.
Yeah, like when you look at those
He
two
had a stomach
options there,
issue.
it was, all right, be 5 seconds late and show up, and that, okay, could possibly look like disrespect, or you're going to stand there in discomfort and look like uncomfortable,
Yeah.
which I feel like shows a lot more disrespect during
Yeah.
a national anthem. So I think it's just a completely kind of bogus
Yeah.
call and kind of power grab by
Yeah.
the FIA at that
So
point.
definitely a red flag.
Yeah, so that was dumb decisions right there, apparently. Okay, George Russell's DRS failed towards the end of the Bahrain Grand Prix, resulting in him using it while being more than 1 second behind Oscar. But he didn't get given a penalty than that because they're like, it wasn't technically his fault. Do you guys think he should have gotten the penalty?
I think that there should have been some type of, not necessarily penalty, but maybe a fine or something, because the FIA is huge about safety. And with the amount of issues that George was having at the end of the race between brakes and the DRS, they should have been fined something, because as we've seen, the FIA is so on top of safety measures right now between their unsafe release earlier in the sessions.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think they should have been fined something, because that's something that the team needs to make sure it won't happen, because that could have been a huge problem, whether it was on a different part of the track where if DRS was a problem.
Yeah.
So I think there should have been some repercussions there.
I think for me, the DRS being activated wasn't the problem. The problem
No.
is the fact that if you looked on the timing map, he
Yeah.
didn't exist. He disappeared. And
Yeah.
so that leads you into a circumstance where now what? Like, what if there's a crash? How are you going to know if it's George? So like you said, coming back to the safety, I think it should have been something that maybe they gave him the black and orange flag and was like, you've got to come in and fix this issue or retire the car. Would have sucked for George. I definitely don't think it deserved a penalty, though. So
Yeah, okay. Liam Lawson was given a 10-second penalty for causing a collision with Nico Hülkenberg in turn 1 after attempting to overtake him on the inside. Was that penalty deserved? Because personally, I didn't actually see any collision. And in the writing, they put collision. So, what are your thoughts?
Collision is a strong word, in my opinion. I don't agree with this penalty. And the reason for that, I think, is a couple things. First of all, Nico Hülkenberg was disqualified from this race. So
Yeah.
it really didn't matter. But also, like you said, I think the collision was very minimal. They like touched, but there was no damage there. And Nico had a lot of room on the outside of turn 1 where he could have gone, and he didn't. And so for me, that was just a racing incident.
I was going to say, I think anything in turn 1 is a racing incident.
Yeah.
And I think they've made that clear so many times when you have these drivers fighting for things like this and nothing happens. So I'm going to call this one a race. I'm just going to call it flat out. It's a racing incident. I don't think it should have been.
Okay, well, that was red flags. Now, these past few races, we have had some interesting results. What predictions do you guys think are going to happen in Saudi Arabia and in the constructors, maybe? Sydney?
I think we're going to see a lot of what we've already been seeing. I think McLaren's going to be consistent, and I think they're going to try to top it. Whether it's Oscar or Lando, we won't really know. Hopefully Ferrari gets some of their mojo back. Hopefully they bring some upgrades and kind of keep it up there. In terms, I think obviously Mercedes is still a strong constructor, a strong contender up there. I mean, I think we're just going to kind of see what we're seeing. Hopefully we see some randoms up there, but I think we're going to kind of see some more of what we've already been seeing this season.
Yeah, I totally agree. Looking specifically at Jeddah, it's a street circuit. It's very, very hot. It comes down really to
Yes.
3 things. tire degradation, driver confidence on a circuit that's so tight, the walls are right there. And with that, qualifying. It's not an easy track to overtake on, so barring any collisions, you pretty much finish where you started. So for me, I think Oscar's coming off of a nice win with a big dominance. I think he takes the cake, and it's all going to depend on whether or not Lando Norris can bounce back after not only how he feels, but the comments he's made in the media over the last couple days.
Okay, well, we will have to wait and see this coming weekend in Jeddah if your predictions will come true. For Marina Contreiras and Sydney Coxe, I'm Christina Rutherford, and thank you for joining Penn State Sports Night.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to this edition of Penn State Sports Night.
For more content like this and so much more, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and X. For everyone here at Penn State Sports Night,
We are
Penn State Sports Night.